Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our SEMLEP Define Your Career Cultural and Creative broadcast. The session will last around 60 minutes and will include a speaker presentation followed by a panel discussion and Q&A. This session will help you to learn more about the variety of different creative careers available to you. Question for today's speaker can be submitted via the Q&A function on the right-hand side of your screen, and this will be open throughout the session. I'm delighted to welcome our first speaker, Paul Thompson, Education and Skills Manager with SEMLEP. Paul, over to you for your presentation.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody, and welcome. Just to explain my role and what we do, I'm the Employment and Skills Manager for the South East Midlands Local Enterprise Partnership. We're kind of responsible for the economic development in a wider geographic area, and that includes Bedfordshire, Luton, Milton Keynes and Northamptonshire, and my particular role is looking after the skills side. So just to give you a feel for the kind of area, this is quite a large area. We've got about 870,000 people in work, and over 200,000 job postings and vacancies in the area in a year at the moment. The area itself has seen high employment, and that's been steadily increasing over the years. We'll probably have a little bit of a dip when the numbers come through for 2021, simply because of COVID and the impact of that. But it's been fairly robust through the period. And we have very high employability rates, in fact, some of the highest in the country. That is right across the patch as well. So for the whole area, we've seen a kind of steady increase, a little bit flatter in West Northamptonshire, but it's still pretty steady, still very high. And in some areas of the patch, such as Milton Keynes, we actually have more jobs than working age population, which is, overall gives us the picture that we have very high levels of employment. Now, does that mean you're going to walk into a job? No, it doesn't. There's lots of things you've got to do to have things in place, and we'll touch on those as we go through the presentation and the panel discussion. So the other good news is on the job vacancies and the trends that we're seeing. Prior to 2020, there'd been a kind of fairly steady decline in line with the national picture in terms of job vacancies. And then beginning of 2020, we saw a slight increase, and that was looking good. And then actually hit, and it dropped off. But I'm pleased to say now, since the final lockdown, it's been increasing dramatically, and we're now about 50% higher than the peak prior to COVID. And in fact, the last 5 months, we've actually seen the highest rates of employment and vacancies out there since 2018. So it's very, very buoyant at the moment. So lots of the sectors you can see that have been more resilient: healthcare, construction, education, digital, manufacturing, logistics, all very, very buoyant. And there's lots of things to have a crack at the moment there, and lots of opportunities. So tonight we're talking about our cultural and creative sector. Very difficult to get a definition for this. So I've taken what has come out of the Department of Culture and Media and Sport from the government. I think the important thing here is to reflect on the creativity and skill and talent elements of this description. The kind of roles that we're going to talk about tonight have either some or all of those elements as part of it. You'll see reference on there to intellectual property as well. That's a very important thing about protecting something that you may have designed, or words or images and things like that, which have been born out of your own creativity. And that's something that we need more people to be aware of kind of going forwards. Now, just to make it a little bit easier, the kind of areas that we're defining and talking about within this sector are listed here. So advertising and marketing, architecture, craft, design, and design can include product design, graphic design, fashion design. There are other elements as well. The media, so film, TV, video, radio, photography, all that kind of thing. Quite a bit of computer kind of services, and there are some other specific elements within that. Publishing, the heritage side of things with the museums and the galleries as well, and libraries. Music, performing and visual arts, animation and visual effects, video gaming as well, and sport and leisure. So it's quite a diverse group, but there's so many different things there to look at and investigate, and so many opportunities. So if we actually have a look at the contribution to this kind of sector to the area, if you look at employment in the South East Midlands, this particular kind of sector contributes about 5% of the employment in the area. And it has been steadily going up, a little bit of a dip from 2018. But overall, it's still a large number of people employed within this area, just over 44,000. If we look at the wider area, though, and we look outside of the sector, and we look at the kind of all the job roles that we see in cultural and creative, changes the picture a little bit. So if we look at the South East, the East and the East Midlands, so this is quite a substantial area. That then brings in places like London and the larger conurbations, and that percentage increases. So it goes up to 8%, and the trend changes as well. You're not seeing that kind of dip that we had on the graph just for the South East Midlands. It's kind of dipped a little bit because of COVID, but we fully forecast that it will start to come back up, and in fact it's coming back up already, and will continue to rise on the pathway that it was pre-COVID-19. So approximately, if we take that area, we're getting towards 250,000 people are actually employed in this area. And if you kind of extrapolate that out to some of the other kind of hidden roles, etc., we reckon there's about 60,000 people actually employed within the South East Midlands within this area. So the job vacancies, as I say, there was a downward trend which followed the national picture. There's nothing unique in that. But we have seen this uplift, we have seen this change, and there's several reasons for that. We are seeing growth within this area. Undoubtedly, there's going to be more opportunities as business grow and we have new businesses start. There is a big increase in the use of digital and the way it's been exploited and used in lots of different areas, particularly media, but also in advertising and marketing. There's a change in the media consumption and how we watch things and see things and have things presented to us, and that's put an extra demand on more video content, more other aspects of that. On the sport and leisure side, our understanding of health and the importance of health has made a change, and more demand and there. We've got lots of heritage, we've got lots of history in the area. And we have new things that are kind of opening up and all the time. Recently, the Silverstone experience, for example, things like that. So there's opportunities there. COVID has changed the way we go on holiday a little bit. So less travel abroad and more staycations. So that actually leads to more kind of demand on this particular sector. And the other thing is we have an ageing population. Hello, I'm one of them. There'll be more people with retirement, there'll be more people with disposable income, and they'll be looking for entertainment and other kind of aspects of that. And the ageing population will increase. And so there will be some more demands kind of based upon that as well as we go forwards. If we then look at the different types of jobs and where they're at within the kind of sector, you can see a big chunk there are on the digital side, and that includes gaming, but a lot in the advertising and the marketing side and sports and fitness, and you can see all the other kind of percentages there. But as you go into broad spread, and over the last 365 days, these are some of the top jobs that we've actually seen within the sector that have come up, and again, it's incredibly diverse. There is something there for everybody. There genuinely is. So everything in there from performing arts, you can see actor that's in there, at the digital side, certainly on the software development and that kind of thing. Graphic design is in there, all kinds of different things. And you also see some other jobs in there which you think, well, hang on a minute, that doesn't strike me as cultural and creative. But those kind of jobs, so I think you'll perhaps see in there something like logistics and supply chain analysts and things like that. They are supporting some of the elements within these roles. So we talk to a lot of businesses, we talk to a lot of organisations, and the one thing they talk to us about are the importance of employability skills when we're recruiting. And if we look at the kind of top areas within this sector, the top kind of what we call core competencies, you might hear them called transferable skills or soft skills. These are the top 10 of kind of each of the areas that the businesses are asking for or requesting. So the one thing you will see through all of these is that communication skills comes up quite regularly, and it doesn't matter what sector you go into, it always does. Teamwork and communication, collaboration, usually in the top three or five. Organisational skills, it depends on what you're doing. If we look at the digital side there, problem solving is a key element within that. If you look at the marketing and advertising side, clearly creativity is important. The sportness and fitness side, organisational skills, you also got creativity in there. That might come as a surprise to some people, but it's an important skill set within that. And then the other kind of elements that I kind of showed earlier on, depends on the different aspects of the particular role of the job, but things like writing and being detail orientated, that means actually kind of being really focused on what you're doing and having attention to detail. Digital skills as well play a role in this. I mean, clearly they play a role within the digital element that I've referred to, and this is the kind of top 10 digital skills that come up time and time again. You'll see a couple of programming languages in there, SQL, Microsoft C# are still the most popular ones, but there is an array of different languages that are used in the programming, certainly within the graphic media side, the visual effects. Most businesses will actually kind of coach and train people on those kind of going forward, so there's plenty of guidance and help there. But it will always change. There'll always be new software coming through. It's those core competencies that sometimes are perhaps more important with this. And if we look at marketing and advertising, what people might be a little bit surprised at there is to see Microsoft Excel and Office at the top of the list rather than perhaps Adobe Photoshop. Marketing, etc., is very much about collecting data and using data, and Microsoft Office is key to that, especially Excel. And there won't be many jobs that you go into these days where you will not use Microsoft Office in some shape or form. So I would always advocate to any young person, get yourself familiar with it whilst you're in education, try and use it as much as you can. That will be invaluable for you kind of moving forwards. Now, I'm pleased to say that we have lots of different pathways that you can take to actually gain access to the sector. We have some of the best colleges in the country now. Going forwards, and there's lots of opportunities through our colleges right the way across the board. We also have one of these new institutes of technology in Milton Keynes, so the South Central Institute of Technology, focusing on digital, and this is slightly higher level qualifications, kind of sits between the colleges and the universities, but different approach to how people are being educated. Might be worth a look if you're interested in that kind of area. But virtually all of our colleges can help and support in some shape and form with kind of occupations within this sector. And also we have our universities as well. So the University of Northampton and North Bedfordshire, the Open University has courses and programs as well that are worth investigating. And we have our new university that's just started in Milton Keynes, MKU. And that will grow into this sector, certainly on the creativity side, kind of going forwards. So plenty of pathways. There's also lots of independent training providers out there. There's also pathways like apprenticeships and traineeships and that kind of thing. I would advocate that you very much look at the career and talk to people in the industry that you're thinking of going into to find out the most suitable pathway. It might not be what you think it is, so it's worth doing that research kind of going forwards. Don't be frightened to ask people. They'll always talk to you. And to find some more information, some other places you can go and have a look. The Creative Industries Federation have got a cracking website. I mean, it really is a really good resource and tool to go and have a look at. It will point you in lots of different directions to find out information, but they've got some fantastic stuff on there as well. Prospects have got some good descriptions about jobs and work experience on their website. The I Could resource is quite good as well. Lots of video clips there where you can hear people talking about what they do within their different jobs. The National Careers Service will give you information about individual job roles. So some of the ones that I've listed earlier, and you can actually have a look at and type those in there, and you'll find a bit more information about pathways, a bit more description as well, but also you'll actually have an indication of salaries as well. And don't be frightened to kind of have a look on our local colleges, universities, independent training provider websites. Lots of information there as well, and guidance. These slides will appear on our website. Next couple of weeks we'll get them on our labour market information page. So if you just type in semlep.com, you can be able to find it, and the information will be there. And there'll also be a copy of this recording as well. So if you want to come back and actually have a look at something, that'll be on there as well. I hope you enjoy this evening. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Paul. That was a great presentation for our audience. It was great for you to provide a definition of cultural and creative jobs, because as we discussed before, it's so broad, and to let the students know about opportunities available, current job vacancies, and really shining a light that there is something for everyone, and then also letting them know about pathways as well. It's now time to start our panel discussion. We've got a group of fantastic speakers joining us tonight. We'll share their biographies in the Q&A so that you can get to read a bit more about them as well as they're speaking. We're going to find out about their pathways first and what they do in their current role and their journey to it. So we're going to start off with Claire first. Please, could you tell us about your current role and your pathway to it?
Hello, yeah, I am the director for an organisation called Team Beds in Luton, which is an active partnership. There is 43 of these partnerships across the country, and essentially we are there to help encourage physical activity and movement in everyday life. So just passionate about people exercising, moving, and getting the most from that, and feeling healthy as a result of it. So that's what I currently do. I've been really lucky to work in sport since university. So when I was at school, I was physically active myself, so passionate about you know, a number of different sports, and I always knew that I didn't quite want to be a teacher. People would sort of encourage me to be a PE teacher, and I thought, I don't think that's actually quite me. So I went to university and did sports science, which enabled me to keep my options quite open at the time. And then as I was coming to the end of my 3-year degree, I was lucky enough to be voted on at the university to be a sports sabbatical. So I was there for another couple of years. I clearly didn't want to leave university, wanted to stay as long as I could, but it was actually a paid role, and a really great opportunity for me to be involved in the organisation of the sports and societies at the university. But probably more interestingly, it gave me an insight into how a students' union ran. So it was all part of the business element of it, and things like that. So that gave me a number of different skills at the time. I then went into working for a local authority as a sports development officer, then a national governing body for sport. So I worked in hockey for a while. And then where I spent the most of my career was working for an organisation called the Football Foundation. And I was there for about 10 years. And it was really about the power of football and how grants, getting to the right people and the right places across the country could hopefully, you know, change individuals and groups' lives. So it was very much looking at not just the facilities that were available, but the power of the game, and how that could help people who may for some reason or another have various challenges. Now again, that kind of, for me, was looking at the different, well, the skills that I had, which was around being organised and managing people. And I ended up managing a team of about 15 people nationally across the country, which led me really to where I am now. You know, I moved away from a national role to a local role because it suited me sort of personally, and that's why I'm now the director of Team Beds in Luton.
Thanks so much, Claire. One thing I noted down from that was the importance of keeping your options open. I think that's really good for the students listening to know. We'll move on to Paul Mills next, please.
Hello, I'm a film and TV producer and director, and I run a production company that makes film and TV. We try and do things slightly differently because of my background in the industry. I noticed, and my business partner noticed, that the industry is not well represented. If you are female, there's less than 1 in 5 working in the industry. If you're black and ethnic minority, it's even smaller. If you come from a working class background, it gets even smaller. So when we set up our production company, we set about trying to combat that. So everything we do is about trying to redress some of those imbalances. How I started was the traditional route. Slightly traditional. I wanted to be an actor. You know, I was young, massive ego, thought I was going to take over the world. Soon realised I wasn't very good, and I was much better behind the camera. And I got my first job on a big budget ITV show called Foyle's War. Completely traditional route. Worked for free in the production office to try and prove that I was worthy to go on to an paid employment. And I just, they saw through my arrogance and ego, and they gave me a chance. And I've been doing it ever since.
Thanks, Paul. Next, we'll move on to Lily. Lily, you're on mute. If you just could unmute yourself, please.
Hi.
Hello.
So I think my career path has been quite eclectic. So I grew up in Luton, and I learnt filmmaking through Community Arts Centre. I moved into the Channel 4 workshop sector and went into London to work in special effects. And we were always very creative and innovative. And I'm showing my age now because we used to make wireframe animations for television, which hadn't been done before. We'd send them down a telephone line. They took a good part of a week to reach Luton to London. We'd then get on the train and go and wrap the textures. So lots of innovation going on there. And then I moved to Somerset. I set up a media centre, and I studied actually film production with the University of Bristol. And I think one of the reasons you see less women is because making films is full on 24/7, and mothering and childcare is not. It's school time, term time. So I moved into film producing, which is basically project management. So lots of soft skills, lots of admin, and again, Microsoft Office coming in there. And taught creative Adobe. Then I moved into the heritage sector. So through program management, it was Millennium Festival, going about 20 years ago, programs of heritage, well, Millennium Festival, so heritage, arts and culture. So then I moved from arts, culture and heritage. And that's really about, you know, what we make today becomes a legacy for tomorrow. So that's also very exciting. then I did something entirely different, and I went and lived in China for a while. And I came back to England and had to hit the ground running, had to earn some money, and became an estate agent, which taught me about property, which took me back into the heritage sector, but with built environments. So it makes my career projection makes sense to me. And I think that the valuable thing out of that is the transferable skills, you know, and that mix of creativity and admin and project management skills, all of those things, team leading. Doesn't matter if you're, like my hobby at one time was fire boy, circus skills, loads of stuff, lived near Glastonbury Festival. It actually, those team leading, those organisational skills come into that, whatever you want to do. So yeah, and I work now for Luton Council, and we have a new heritage strategy, and we have a commitment to transforming lives through arts, culture and heritage. So I've got more questions in a way than I have answers, because one of the things that Luton has one of the youngest populations in the country. Over 30% of the population in Luton are under the age of 30. Now, if you're at school, a 30-year-old seems quite old, but actually that's very young. So we do have a really young population, which is absolutely fantastic, and it's that means innovation, that means energy. Yeah, so that's very exciting. So my question I want people to think is that heritage is not just about history, it's not just about buildings, it's about cultural heritage, it's about our industrial past, it's about engineering innovation, it's all of those things. What does it mean to you, and what skills might you need to look in the heritage industries, both the soft skills, and direct conservation heritage, for example, creativity, digital skills, all of those things. So I think it's a really exciting sector to be in right now. Yeah.
Thanks, Lily. And yeah, the questions that Lily has just posed to you, if you do want to share your reflections in the Q&A, please do that and we can read them out later. That would be great. Lily, also great that you noted that about transferable skills, and that roles that students will be doing even now will be very useful for careers later on in their life, and they're all developing those skills now. And we'll move on to Sam now, please. Yeah, Sam, we can hear you.
Great. Hi, well, thanks for having me tonight. Yeah, my name is Sam Javid. I am the creative director for a company called the Culture Trust. We're based in Luton, and we look after some of the town's theatre spaces in the Hat Factory Arts Centre, some galleries and museums like Wardown House Museum, which is where I am today. This isn't actually what my living room looks like. I'm in one of the offices in our museums. We've got a really cool event going on downstairs where some secondary school kids are projection mapping music videos onto heritage items. So I'm going to go and see that after. So this is where I am today, one of our museums. We also have Stockwood Discovery Centre, which is an outdoor kind of gallery and a big collection of carriages as well. And we're also opening up some new creative workspaces. So we talked a bit about what creativity means. We're trying to figure out as well what that means in the contemporary sense. But at the moment, we're expecting architects, graphic designers, filmmakers, graphic designers to move into all of these new spaces that we're just opening up in the town centre. I'm new to this job, 3 months in, and I'm new to Luton, so I'm really starting to get to know lots of people your age, but through links with our schools and links with sixth forms, but also people who've been around the town for a while and other creatives, and again working out what the word creative and cultural and heritage, what that means to Luton, because in each town it will be different depending on how the industries are developed and what the people really want to make of it. My career in the arts, which is normally what I say, in the arts and cultural sector, really kind of took off when I started university. I knew I wanted to go to university because it looked fun, and I thought I wanted to do law, but actually after speaking to a few lawyers, I completely changed my mind, and I saw that the university did a course called Festival Management, and I loved going to festivals, and I thought, you know what, I'd rather be the best festival producer than a rubbish lawyer. So I went and spent 3 years doing arts and festivals management, and lots of people always said to me, I can't believe that's a real degree. But actually, there's so many incredible, more vocational courses now at universities and at colleges. And actually, it's kind of a mix of business. You know, how do you develop an organization and make money? A mixture of art history, which is something I'd never done. You know, I remember my first essay was something like, "What is art?" And I had no idea how to write about that. But, you know, it really got you thinking. And a mixture of marketing as well, really, branding and promotion. So I went to Leicester in the East Midlands to do that, and tried really hard to get involved with anything I could. And one of the biggest festivals, about the biggest festival in Leicester, is Leicester Comedy Festival. It's second only to Edinburgh Comedy Festival. So we have 900 shows in 60 venues across 3 weeks. And from my very first day, I knew that I wanted to work for them because they were the biggest festival in the city, really credible, and they got to work with comedians. It was really show busy. So I just spent my first 6 months making sure I knew everyone who worked at the festival, and going to all of the bars, which I was going to do anyway as a student, but going to all of the venues and making sure that they knew who I was. And so within my first year, I was one of 3 or 4 students who took over a venue. We won the Best Venue Award. At the end of my 3 years at university, I actually became the festival producer for 3 years. So I was then looking after the full festival, the biggest festival in the city, and I was really excited to be running it and developing it. For me, it wasn't just about the arts, the creative, the culture. It touches on everything people have mentioned today in terms of placemaking, understanding what the city is, all the stuff Paul mentioned in terms of all those stats. You know, that really comes into play when you're looking at festivals on a citywide scale, because you're suddenly able to bring people in, develop jobs, develop industries. So that's when I started having an interest in that. And I went on to be a producer for a company called Outreach, and they go around to different towns. Lots of them what they call low engagers, so people who don't engage with the arts very often. And we go to them and we do pop-up festivals, and a way to bring in audiences and businesses and creative communities and bring them together with really kind of a quick flash and bang, a small impact, 3 days in a festival. And, you know, we wouldn't be the people that would stay behind and make it happen. We'd be the inspiration. And I think that's really important as well. You know, not everyone is set up to do the long-term work. Sometimes what you can do is a bit more radical, and there's other support systems that can build it up. You don't have to do everything. And then that really led me on to the job here in Luton, where now we're looking after everything from developing the town to developing people and developing the arts. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. A big part of this broadcast is to let students know about kind of careers and courses that they might not have heard of before and know that are available. And you've just made that sound very exciting. So thanks for sharing your pathway.
Cool.
Next, we're going to move on to our industry insights section of the broadcast. And Claire, we would really like to know, what does a typical day look like in your role?
Oh, a typical day. Well, let's look at today. So this morning I have been on a national call around how we can work together to live longer better. So it's all about trying to change the system for older people and really improve that area in our patch, which is Bedfordshire. And we've been really focusing on the language that is used around aging and healthy aging, and how there's so many sort of negative connotations around it, and how positive language could really influence. So sometimes it's around a particular agenda like that. There is an element of management because I have a team, so it's really making sure that we're all working together effectively and everything is in line with our strategy. That's something that I particularly enjoy, actually. I really like that internal management piece and just trying to get the best out of individuals because it's so, I mean, it's so rewarding when you know that, you know, your team is effective and everyone's happy and doing what they, you know, doing what they can be doing to the best of their ability. And then there's sometimes there's the more external piece. So yeah, it's so varied. My day can be one element of talking, you know, and working around the young people's agenda. Are the preschools in our area able to talk confidently about physical activity? because if young people, you know, before the age of 5 don't get positive engagement and positive role models, then their trajectory around healthy living is not going to be as strong as it could be. To then the live longer better agenda, so really focusing on the sort of older age group in our society. So yeah, very varied, which keeps me happy and keeps me busy and keeps me on my toes.
Thanks, Claire. Students always love to hear about the day in a life of someone's role, so that was really interesting and good to know it's so varied as well. Paul, we'll move on to you next. We've already heard from Sam about maybe some careers that we might not have, students might not have heard of before. Please, could you tell us about some of the roles in your industry that, young people listening to might not know about?
My industry is a microcosm of the kind of country as a whole. There isn't much that you couldn't apply in another area, another sector that we don't use within our industry. I mean, they're just really odd kind of things. Bird trainers and, you know, weird stunt people and, you know, people who make, you know, I'm sure Lily can talk more about this, but there's I'm very lucky that I get to go to places that lots of people don't get to go. And I can remember my very first time going to Artem, who make huge props for films. They design pyrotechnics and fire and, you know, special effects, not visual effects. So they're the practical stuff that you see. And you go in there and you see these people and you go, well, these people would probably be in prison if they weren't here. You know, they're the sort of people that are just, you go, I wonder how, you know, how you would cope in a normal job. And they're wonderful. A friend of mine describes our industry as like the circus run by the army. You see people that are, you know, that would probably have had the behavioral issues in your classroom, or the daydreamers. I'm a terrible daydreamer, but I get paid for it. It's my you know, my wife, if I come home and say I've had a hard day, I don't get much sympathy with my job. And it's so varied. Yeah, I mean, it's a micro, you know, cosm of everything. You get mechanics, drivers, you know, name it. We've probably got you know, there's an aspect of the film industry where their skills are used.
Thanks, Paul. And we'll move on to Lily next. Lily, when you were talking about your pathway, you reflected on some of the main changes you'd seen during your career, and we would like to know how you think your industry is growing and where you see it developing in the next 5 to 10 years.
I think there's going to be a huge collision between creative and cultural and heritage. The buzzword in our heritage strategy, the buzzword coming out of government for everything from arts, culture to planning regulation, is placemaking, this idea of connecting. My passion is also connecting people across the physical into the virtual world. That's what I've always done. I was an animator and a special effects person, and then when I studied media, culture and communication at the Institute of Education and British Film Institute, and taught those modules, my favourite thing to teach is animation, because animation is like you know, creativity anywhere, discipline, you know, is really, and all of those things come into it. So I think that in terms of the heritage sector and placemaking, we're having this, it's where everything collides. So we have physical environment, we have digital environments, we have augmented realities, we have, you know, our lineage, our heritage lineage, our cultural and our creative sectors. I really just think this is going to be quite an exciting place. Our heritage strategy is called Curating Luton, and I think that the shift in my career sort of is reflected by, you know, when I was growing up and you went to a museum, for example, you know, everything was really boring, quite frankly. You just went to a museum when it rained. And now, you know, they're really exciting, interactive places. I'm you know, and heritage is also the culture. We're not just creating culture in the real world, we're also creating it in the virtual world. We create virtual spaces, we create communities that we, and the way we behave as people, our behaviours change because we become avatars in the virtual world. So this whole, it's a bit like living in the Matrix right now. I think it's really exciting, and I think that's what's exciting for me about heritage. It is about history and archaeology. After I leave this morning, I mean, today I've been looking at data sharing, how to analyze data, how we can share data, frameworks for heritage at risk, how we can analyze that data in terms of social return on investment, you know, how we can then use that money to attract funds to make things happen. I've been writing a funding bid to the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and really about what infrastructure we need to, you know, we want to transform lives through arts, culture and heritage. What does that mean? How do we, what infrastructure do we need? How can we actually make that happen? And then after I leave, I'm going to be working on an archaeology research report, which is for somebody putting in a planning application in an entirely different place in the UK. So, you know, heritage is everything. What's underground, what's overground, what's in people's heads. Yeah, so I just think it's an exciting sector to be in right now.
Thanks, Lily. Again, showing your career is so varied and your role is so varied, and yeah, again, passion really coming off for the students as well, so thanks. Sam, we'll move to you next. We would like to know about some of the misconceptions that people might have about your industry and what you would say to demystify these misconceptions. And again, if anyone else would like to add on to what Sam says after this, please do. Oh, you're on mute now. There we go. Oh, you're on mute again. You're still on mute.
I'm happy to jump in while Sam's working on it.
Okay, once we get Sam back, thank you.
Yeah. Misconceptions. Yeah. I spent 3 years actually working for an organisation, Women in Football, and there was and at the time there's just some real barriers and challenges around the industry, you know, physios, journalists who wanted to work in football, who were really, you know, there were so many barriers to do that. And I don't know, it's not necessarily a misconception, but I just was really pleased to see the resilience of individuals around following their ambition and following their passion. And, you know, for example, 10 years ago, you know, there was one female commentator on Match of the Day. And now if you turn on a Saturday afternoon, you know, it's 50-50, and it's fantastic that has changed. And I hope that young people can see that if they do want to be a journalist in an industry that they might see as not for them, it really can be, and to keep at it and keep resilient, because things do change. So I don't know, I think that was, and I went into football not necessarily thinking that it wasn't for me. I kind of stumbled into it, and I did find that I was a minority at the time, but I worked through it, and I would encourage other people to do so. So yeah, follow your dream and follow your ambition.
Thanks so much, Claire. And I think we've just got Sam back as well. That was perfect timing.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks so much. I think I'll answer about the misconceptions, but I'm definitely going to jump in on the question you asked, Claire, about a day in the life as well. But misconceptions in my field around arts and culture is actually often around people think that you don't get paid, or you have to do free internships, or, you know, in order to do these things, you have to put yourself out there and work for free. But that's really not the case anymore. And actually, although 5 or 10 years ago when I was starting, you know, I would take it part and parcel. I'm happy to go and run your box office for you for free, because, you know, it's good experience for me to see. Actually, now there's a lot more respect and credibility if you say to somebody, actually, no, look, my time is worth something. You know, I want to get an insight into your industry. But people, and especially people in this call, and you know, the good sort of people, the right people, will know that they need to bring young people, the new emerging voices and emerging talent into the organization. So they'll be grasping for you. So I think, you know, you get advice, someone at secondary school, you get advice from all sorts of places, and some of it in the cultural world is, you know, you've just got to do the bits for free. You've got to go out and do that. But actually, don't offer yourself for free. You're worth something, whether you've got the same experience as me or you've got a completely different experience. So that's the main misconception I like to talk about. Someone's got that. Yeah.
I do stuff for free. So I think we can't just say that, you know, you can't. It used to be that you had to do it for free to get into it, but I still do stuff for free, and I still work with new entrants and who need help to do things. So don't, you know, I think you have to make a decision on the project. You know, if Spielberg comes along and says to me, Paul, can you do a couple of weeks on this? It's a really good project. I'll consider it, and I'm seasoned. So I think it's you've got to look at it. What is good for you? I think you're right. Don't just do it because it's expected. Don't just, you know, say I'm not going to do it for free because I shouldn't. Look at it. At each individual case is what I would say.
Cool. I'm going to come back. Do you mind if I do the day in the life? Because I had an awesome day this week that I'll tell you guys about. So the Hat Factory Arts Centre is 4 floors. I started my day on the top with, there was a beatbox company who are doing a collaboration with an orchestra, recording with a 12-piece orchestra, beatboxing live, and they were recording a new album of nursery rhymes. So it's nursery rhyme beatbox. I spent some time with them. I then went down to our next floor where I had a meeting. We had a meeting about launching our new creative workspaces and how we were going to get all of the creatives from Luton together and use these hot desking spaces. I went down to the next floor and we had a theatre company in rehearsing with local actors, but people from across the country as well, for a new show that plays out in the streets of Luton, and audiences go around with headsets on. So they were testing all that out. And I went down to the cafe and met an editor who wanted to talk about how we can have a book swap in our cafes across the Culture Trust. And then it was the end of the day and I got to go home having done an incredible day like that. So, you know, you can fill your time with the most amazing things being in this sector. And I think, you know, it'll be what you, I've worked hard for the last 10 years to make sure that my days can be like that. But, you know, it is what you make it.
Thanks, Sam. And we can stay with you for a student question as well. We've had a student called Anne-Marie who would like to know about musical theatre and some of the kind of opportunities available within musical theatre.
Yeah, for sure. I got some experience in musical theatre. I used to work a lot with the Curve Theatre in Leicester, which is the biggest regional theatre outside of London. And there's more big regional theatres outside London now, but what they specialise in is musical theatre, and they work a lot with Andrew Lloyd Webber, and he opens lots of his shows there now. And I think there's lots of opportunities to do that. I think the best thing, my advice would be, work out exactly what bit of musical theatre you're interested in. Because, you know, do you want to be on stage at things like Hairspray in the West End? Because there'll be different people you should talk to and different companies you should talk to. Do you want to be in a 4 or 5 person theatre company who do some really raw, cutting edge, gritty stuff, who perform in underground tunnels? Or do you want to do anything in between? Because I think musical, when you talk to somebody like me, or if you're, you know, you get to speak to other people who can hook you up with other positions, really know what your vision is. What do you want from musical theatre? Are you a singer who really just wants to be on stage, but you like the idea of acting? Or, like I say, are you a theatre maker whose gaze is going to be a bit more musical? So I think, you know, work out what you want from it. And if you don't know, then, you know, look around, go and see as many shows as you can. And I think start speaking to people, start looking up different companies, see as much as you can, but start to work out what you mean by musical theatre, because it can mean so many different things to so many different people. And once you can articulate properly what you're really interested in and what really excites you, you'll find that you're just meeting the right people, and that pathway is kind of opening up by itself. But you've got to be clear in what your vision is there.
Thanks, Sam. We'll move on to Lily next. We've spoken about skills with Paul and the skills shortages in your industry. We would love to know what have been some of the main skills that you've needed to be successful. And also, I know we touched upon transferable skills before.
Actually, I wanted to jump in about something that we were speaking about earlier.
Of course, yeah.
So it does answer this question. I really want to talk to if there are parents listening, because when I grew up, I wanted to go to art school and go to fine art school, and I wasn't. My parents were just like, "We're not going to find you to do that. You won't get a job in that." So I studied graphic design and sort of took another route with my creativity. And I think it was something that Paul said earlier, that about cultural and creative industries. The business models, the way we make money, the way the industry makes money, not necessarily individuals, is the exploitation of intellectual property. So if you create something, make sure you own those rights, but the industry is changing. So before, for example, if you were a musician, you might print records and sell records, but now because we download music streaming, the musicians are not getting paid anymore in the same way. So the business models within creative industries are very flexible. They change a lot. So I think, and I agree actually, with both of you when you were talking about valuing and sort of, I think what Sam was saying is value yourself. Don't do something for nothing. You're really valued, and you have something to give. But actually, likewise, sometimes doing something for nothing is the payoff. Is that you are learning a skill or getting an experience that you want and you can't get any other way. Because if you choose to go to university, you're looking at huge fees, but actually if you learn something by volunteering, that's the payoff. So it's got to be valuable to you. That I think that's what we're all saying. You've got to value yourself, and you've got to look at the business models for the creative industry and how it is an industry, and it had to sustain it, and those business models and ways of making money changes all the time with new technology and new ways of being, yeah, but you really have to follow your passion. And I've forgotten your question, Charlotte.
That's okay. No, it's good to hear different views on it as well. And yeah, it seems like we're saying do get volunteering experience. It is really important for your CV, but it is important obviously that students are in a place where they can afford to do this, and that they're able to get these experiences and opportunities. And we'll actually move to Claire next, if that's okay. We would love to hear about getting into the industry. So we were wondering if you had any kind of application form tips, tips for interviews. Students always really like to hear about this in different industries.
Yes, I think particularly when I was working in the football industry, what was the immediate put off was if someone said, I really love football. And you think, yep, that's great, but that's not actually the individual. I'm looking for somebody, and it might have been in marketing or a particular strength in grant giving or managing people. So just really think about the role and what you're applying for. It was really competitive at that time, so the additional bits that came through on any application really caught my eye. If you did know that somebody had a particular interest in something else, and you could see that them as an individual, what they were giving to their local area, or what they were doing on a voluntary basis, in outside of the work areas, because it really, the team element that you're often looking for from an individual is strong, and you can get a lot from those additional things that people are doing. So I'd really think about that when you're applying. And from an interview perspective, I think it doesn't go without saying, because I have interviewed people that haven't really researched the organisation that they are looking to join. And that's really disappointing as somebody who's interviewing someone. So do your research, I don't think that you can over prepare for things. Some individuals that I've interviewed have come in and we haven't asked for a presentation, for example, but they've actually left on the table, you know, here's 3 or 4 pieces of paper that just demonstrate how I feel I could work for you, and the elements that I have as an individual that I think would contribute to this role. So sometimes, and you can be quite blown away by that. You think, wow, okay, I didn't even ask for that, and this individual is giving that little bit more, so that enables them to jump out at an interview. So yeah, really research. You can't over prepare. Try and ensure that you come out of it, though, your personality, because if you've got through the sifting and the actual number of applications that have been reviewed, what the interviewer is looking for is that team fit generally. So just make sure that you try and be true to yourself, and don't be disheartened, because sometimes you know, if you don't get through, I often recommend individuals to other organisations that I'm working for, because it's sometimes such a tough, you know, tough decision to be made. And if someone's made an impression, I do keep a note of it. I do pass their information on to other people if they would like that. So, you know, don't be disheartened. You've got to be resilient in this industry. So they would be my tips.
Thanks, Claire. That was really useful for the students to hear. We've got 5 minutes left of the broadcast, and to close the session, it'd be great to hear your one piece of final advice for the students. So we'll go around to each of you. Claire, if we could start with you, please.
Oh, I think I just said it. Really, it is that resilience, and I think that is even getting the job that you're looking for, or going on to get the qualifications that you're looking to do. But if you can be as resilient as possible as an individual, that will help you throughout your career, because things don't always go to plan. Projects don't always work, and actually the things that we learn are often from the failures. So pick yourself up, move on, and try and learn from what didn't work.
Thanks, Claire. And next we'll go to Paul.
Make yourself indispensable. Make it so that when someone turns around and they, you know, for example, that example I always use is if I'm on a film set and I'm thirsty and I'm going, oh, Colin mustn't be here because I'm thirsty. I know that, you know, Colin is always taking care of everybody. And when they're not here, oh, they're really good. Make yourself indispensable. Whatever job you're doing, go in and do everything that you can to help the people that you're working with. It doesn't matter if you're going to continue in that role. As Claire says, we all know each other. You know, you'll say, actually, I've been working in camera department. I quite fancy moving to sound. I know people who work in sound, and I know if you've got a good work ethic, I'll quite happily recommend you. But just whatever you're doing, make yourself indispensable.
Thanks, Paul. And next we'll move to Lily, please. Lily, you're on mute.
I would say you're here because you're interested in the cultural and creative sector and you're creative. So don't wait for opportunity. Make and create your own opportunities. And the example I would give is when I left the Channel 4 workshop sector, I wanted a job with a special effects company, and it was incredibly difficult for working class and female people, and also people from Luton. You know, it was really incredibly difficult to get into at that time, and I just made I made a scratch video that was basically hunting for Lily. We've got to find her, we've got to find her, we've got to find her. And then at the end it was like, here's my phone number. And I think I made 10 of these videotapes, sent them out to the 10 companies that I'd chosen. I had 7 interviews and 3 job offers, and it was because I hadn't waited for a job to come along. I was like, these are the people I want to work for, so I have to make them want me. You're all creative, that's why you're here. So yeah, don't wait for opportunity to come knocking. You make your opportunity creatively.
Thanks. Yeah, the importance of being proactive. And finally, we'll move on to Sam.
Hey, I'm just going to check my microphone one more time. Am I okay this time?
We can hear you. Yeah.
I've too nervous now. So embarrassingly, this took me so long to work out, and probably only a few years ago, I realized that the best thing I can do is about being authentic. And throughout so many professional situations and probably personal interviews or speaking to people in a meeting, I try and pretend that I could do everything, or I try and pretend that I was really good at that, or try and pretend to be interested in this. And since I've decided to be authentic, I've got on much better. Expectations are much clearer. People know what they get from me. I'm honest about what you don't get from me. You know, if you're in an interview at any age, and you know, there's a question around, you know, whether it's organization. If you're really organized and you're really studious, that's your strong point. Be authentic about that. But then if someone asks you about your energy, say, actually, I find it easier to work in this type of environment, because they know what they're going to get, and you won't have to pretend to be someone else later. Equally, if you know, if actually you're always late to things, but you know what, you're really good creatively and you've got some really good ideas, sell yourself on exactly that, because you know there's room for everyone in every organization. You don't have to be amazing in everything, and it really just makes things easier later down the line if you're authentic from the beginning.
Thanks, Sam. Thank you so much to our panel today for sharing your insights with the students about cultural and creative careers. It was great to hear all of your opinions on things and your experiences, your pathways, some of the skills that you need. And also thank you to Paul for your presentation at the start. Also, a huge thank you to everyone who tuned in. We're sharing a feedback form, and it would be great if you could complete this. We really hope you enjoyed our SEMLEP broadcasts, and they will be available to view on the SEMLEP video library very soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.